The moment Cory Booker stepped in, the entire conversation changed, because he wasn't just questioning two scandals. He was exposing a pattern powerful people hoped no one would ever connect. His voice cut through the noise like a warning siren, forcing the country to look at a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. And once he laid out the pieces, it became impossible to unsee the connection. An attorney general who promised transparency but refuses to release long-awaited files, and a defense secretary who cannot give a clear explanation for a deadly operation he claimed to have witnessed.
Law.
Well, they're not complying with their commitments they made for years and years. A lot of these players, from Donald Trump to the Attorney General, have been saying that they were going to be transparent, open, and release to the larger levels of accountability that they promised, and it just hasn't been done. So there is more outrage, as we're seeing, as they have said that they were going to do it, and they haven't, simply haven't. And so it's right for my colleagues to be demanding an update on what their plan is going forward.
I know you and other colleagues are also demanding answers as it relates to these boat strikes, and I want to talk about that. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is under intense scrutiny right now after he revealed he did not see that second strike on an alleged drug boat that killed two survivors of the initial attack. Here's what he said about it.
No. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire, smoke, you can't see anything, you got digital. This is called the fog of war.
What's your reaction to those comments by Secretary Hegseth?
I mean, he's incompetent, and we've known that from the beginning. Right out of the blocks, he was leaking classified information on a commercial app. This man is so incompetent that even many of his Republican colleagues are now calling him to resign, or frankly, just calling him either telling things that he's either lying or just that incompetent. So right now, we have an operation going on, military attacks going on, where they're using language like we're at war, but yet they haven't come to Congress yet. That is a violation of our Constitution. And if we're not at war, then attacking boats like this is criminal activity and should be investigated as such. And so we're in this situation where either they're violating the Constitution or they're violating the law. But now they're compounding that by doing something that is widely seen within our own military as well as in international communities as something that is grievously wrong, to go with shipwrecked individuals that have been disabled to come back yet again and kill them. This is not who we are. This is not America. And this is a man that, instead of saying the buck stops with me, I take accountability and responsibility, he again is trying to dodge that because he finds himself yet again, because of his incompetence and failures in leadership, he finds himself in the hot seat.
But he did say Admiral Bradley did the right thing. So he seems to be standing by the results of that second strike. Is that not the secretary owning it?
No, it's not. Well, first of all, Congress should now investigate this. And I'm glad to see some Republicans stepping up and saying, finally, they're going to provide some administrative accountability, some checks and balances. This whole affair should be investigated. He is standing by something that, frankly, is, again, something that is against U.S. law and should be investigated fully. So this is not satisfactory. This is a man who's shown incompetence in the past. This is a president that's engaging in activities that he's calling war, that violates our Constitution, because only Congress can declare war. We should be stepping up now and launching a full investigation, not only to this incident, but to the other fact that we are now doing military strikes against unnamed organizations that, to me, are extra-constitutional.
Republican Roger Wicker, the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, has vowed vigorous oversight on these strikes. What questions do you want answered about the operation specifically? And do you have confidence that Senator Wicker and Republicans will take the steps needed to get to the bottom of all of this?
Well, so far, Congress has shown an advanced form of yoga, bending over backwards to do everything this president has. Remember, they didn't have investigations when Hegseth and others were leaking classified documents on a commercial app. They haven't had investigations to the president for his other military engagement. So my confidence is not high. And right now we have moved major military assets in and around South America. They're engaging in military strikes for weeks now, and we have had nothing from Congress in terms of formal investigations or even hearings on the matters. Congress needs to start standing up and doing its job against a president who is trying to
These aren't random failures. These aren't unrelated missteps. They form the outline of something deeper, an erosion of accountability unfolding in real time that IT began with the Attorney General's promises. For years, she spoke about openness. She insisted the public deserved the full truth about the Epstein case. She talked about transparency, access, honesty, and a future where everything would be laid bare. But when the law finally required her to release those files, nothing happened. No update, no schedule, no explanation. Just a silence so loud, it became the story itself. Booker pointed out that this wasn't some minor oversight. These were vows made repeatedly, in interviews, in briefings, in public conversations. Commitments that helped build trust. And now, when it matters most, those commitments have completely evaporated. People noticed. Rumors online began to swirl. Speculation grew that unseen forces were influencing the delay. Nothing confirmed, but the timing raised eyebrows everywhere. How could documents that were promised for so long suddenly become impossible to release? Why did the Attorney General go quiet the moment the law required action? Booker didn't accuse, he didn't need to. The silence spoke for itself, and every unanswered question made the situation look more suspicious. But while that scandal simmered, another erupted with explosive force. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth found himself under intense scrutiny after a deadly strike involving an alleged drug boat. The operation was already controversial, but the moment Hegseth started explaining it, everything spiraled into confusion. He said he watched the first strike live. Then he said he left the room before the second strike, an hour or two later, when 2 survivors from the initial blast were killed. He insisted he never saw those survivors. And he repeated, again and again, that the fog of war made things unclear. But nothing about that explanation sounded clear. In fact, Booker immediately sensed something was wrong. What kind of defense leader leaves in the middle of a live strike? Why wasn't he present to verify what happened in the aftermath? How could he confidently defend a second strike he claims not to have witnessed? And why insist so loudly that an admiral made the right call when the legality and morality of that call are being questioned around the world? These contradictions weren't just troubling, they were revealing. Booker reminded the country that this same defense secretary had previously leaked classified information through a commercial messaging app. Someone with a documented history of questionable judgment. Someone who seemed to treat serious responsibilities with a casualness that shocked even people inside his own party. Booker didn't mince words. He said what many were already thinking. This looked like incompetence. And worse, it wasn't the first time. But Booker wasn't interested in attacking personalities. He was interested in exposing patterns. And what he revealed next pushed the conversation onto much deeper ground. The defense secretary repeatedly used war language to justify these strikes. But if this is war, Congress must authorize it. And if Congress hasn't authorized anything, then these actions fall into a completely different category under U.S. law, one far more serious. Booker made it clear, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot declare something war 1 minute and routine operations the next. That blurred line is where real danger begins, because when leaders operate in that gray zone, they bypass the constitutional safeguards designed to prevent unchecked power. Booker warned that if Congress stays silent while the executive branch stretches its authority, the country risks drifting into a place where oversight becomes optional. That isn't a political argument. It's a warning about the structure of the government itself. And as Booker laid out the implications, the stakes became impossible to ignore. Then came the moral dimension, the part of the story that stunned even seasoned observers. The second strike targeted individuals who, according to numerous reports, were shipwrecked, injured, and defenseless. These weren't armed combatants. These were survivors hanging onto wreckage, unable to pose any meaningful threat. International military experts immediately raised alarms. Veterans spoke up online. Service members shared their disbelief privately and publicly. This wasn't just controversial. Many believed it crossed fundamental ethical lines that the country has always claimed to uphold. Booker refused to let this be dismissed as a misunderstanding. He said openly that if this incident becomes normalized, something essential about the nation's identity would be lost. Because even in conflict, humanity matters. Rules matter. Standards matter. And if a nation begins justifying the targeting of disabled survivors, then it risks abandoning the principles it has spent decades defending. Booker wasn't trying to stir emotion. He was articulating a fear that many in the military community felt but didn't yet have the microphone to express. And then Booker took it further. He called out Congress itself. He said Congress had been bending over backwards to accommodate the administration's behavior. He pointed out that they failed to investigate earlier leaks of classified material. They failed to question other military actions that raised concerns. They failed to exercise the oversight the Constitution requires. And now, even with major military assets moving into a region and multiple operations underway, Congress still hadn't held formal hearings. Booker's criticism wasn't aimed at one side or another. It was aimed at the institution as a whole. The uncomfortable truth he exposed is that a system only works when its participants choose to use it. And right now, too many were choosing not to. Once Booker laid all the pieces out, the picture became impossible to deny. An attorney general ignoring a law requiring transparency. A defense secretary unable or unwilling to offer a coherent explanation for a deadly strike. A Congress abdicating its oversight responsibilities. These weren't isolated scandals. They were symptoms of a larger collapse in accountability. Booker said it plainly. If these actions are allowed to pass without scrutiny, future leaders will feel empowered to stretch their authority even further, and the drift won't stop on its OW and IT never does. Booker explained that this kind of erosion doesn't happen dramatically. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, as people get used to exceptions. A broken promise here, an unclear explanation there, a delayed investigation, a muted response. Slowly, the baseline shifts. Actions that would once have caused outrage become normal. Violations that once would have triggered hearings get shrugged off. And the public, overwhelmed by constant noise, stops paying attention. That's when power can operate in the shadows. Booker warned that if the country accepts contradictions as explanations and silence as accountability, then the foundation of constitutional governance begins to crumble. Not all at once, not in a single moment, but piece by piece, until the structure looks intact but no longer functions. And when Booker spoke directly about the public's role, he didn't mince words. He said accountability isn't automatic. It doesn't happen because people hope for it. It happens because people demand it. If the Attorney General refuses to release files she promised, the public must pressure her to follow the law. If the Defense Secretary offers contradictory statements about a lethal strike, the public must insist on a full investigation. If Congress stays silent when power expands, the public must call out that silence. Because without that pressure, nothing changes. Booker's message wasn't just a warning. It was a call to action. A reminder that democracy depends on people paying attention, asking questions, and refusing to be numbed by constant controversy. He knows that once the public stops caring, those in power stop worrying. And when leaders stop worrying about being held accountable, the entire system becomes vulnerable to SO. If you're watching this and feeling uneasy, that's a good sign. It means you're still paying attention. It means you still care about living in a country where explanations matter, where transparency is expected, where the people in charge can't hide behind vague language or shifting stories. It means you understand that this moment isn't just about one scandal. It's about the direction the country is heading. And that's why your voice matters to SO. Stay informed. Stay engaged. And if you want breakdowns like this, stories that cut through the noise, highlight the contradictions, and expose what's really happening, then make sure you tap that subscribe button, hit like, and join the conversation in the comments. Your voice isn't just part of the discussion. It's part of the pressure that keeps the truth from getting buried, because accountability doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we demand it.